Hello everyone, this is Stephanie Padimdim, and for today I'm going to talk about the myth of Cupid and Psyche by Lucius Alpucius. But first, let us know the Cupid and Psyche origin. The story of Cupid and Psyche was known to Boccaccio in 1370. Ever since, the reception of Cupid and Psyche in the classical tradition has been extensive. The story has been retold in poetry, drama, and opera, and depicted widely in painting, sculpture, and even wallpaper. Though Psyche is usually referred to Roman mythology by her Greek name, her Roman name through direct translation is Anima. And here are the characters of Cupid and Psyche. Let us have Cupid. He is the son of Venus, which is the goddess of love and beauty. He sent, he is being sent by his mother to make Psyche fall in love with a monster. Next is Cupid fall in love with Psyche. Let us have Psyche. She is sister of Venus and a wife of Cupid, the goddess of the soul, and depicted in ancient mosaics as butterfly-winged goddess. Next, let's have Ceres or Mercury, the goddess of agriculture, grain crops, and fertility, and motherly relationships. Next is Persephone, which is the goddess queen of the underworld and, and the wife of the god Hades. Next, we have Venus, the Roman goddess of love and the mother of Cupid, and Apollo, the god of Greek prophecy and healing. Next is we have Jupiter or Zeus, the god of the sky and the ruler of Olympian. Then the king, who is the father of Psyche, and his two sisters. Next, we have the Zephyr, the sweetest and mildest of wings, and the Cerberus, which has three head, and it called the three-headed dog. Then Charon, which is the ferryman. And now, let's begin the story of Cupid and Psyche. Once upon a time, there was a king with three daughters. They were all beautiful, but by far from the most beautiful was the youngest, which is Psyche. She was so beautiful that people began to neglect the worship of Venus, which is Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. Venus was very jealous and asked her son Cupid to make Psyche fall in love with a horrible monster. When he saw how beautiful she was, Cupid dropped the arrow and meant for her and pricked himself and fell in love with her. Despite her great beauty, no one wanted to marry Psyche. Her parents consulted an oracle and were told that she was destined to marry a monster. And they were to take her to the top of the mountain and leave her there. The west wind took her and wafted her away to a palace, where she was waited on by invisible servants. When night came, her new husband visited her and told her that he would always visit her at night and she must never try to see him. Although her invisible husband was kind and gentle with her, and the invisible servants attended to her every desire, Psyche grew homesick. She persuaded her husband to allow her sister to visit her. When they saw how she lived, they became very jealous and talked Psyche into picking at her husband, saying that he was a monster who was fattening her up to be eaten, and that her only chance of safety was to kill him. Psyche took a lamp and a knife, but when she saw her beautiful husband Cupid, she was so surprised that she dripped some water wax onto his shoulder, waking him. She, he took in he took in the situation of a glance and immediately left Psyche and the magnificent palace she had been living in despair and disappeared in a puff of smoke. Psyche roamed about looking for her husband, and eventually, in desperation, approached his mother, which is Venus. Still angry, the goddess set various tasks for Psyche. The first was to take the pile of wheat, barley, millet, witches, beans, and lentils and separate them by evening in despair. Psyche was unable to start dividing the grains. An ant took, an ant took pity in her and called over its fellow ants and separated the pile of Psyche and then disappeared before Venus returned. The next morning, Venus demanded that Psyche cross river and collect the golden wool of the sheep grazing there. When she reached the riverside, the river god warned Psyche not to tempt a flood and beware of the rams and destroy mortals. Instead, he advised Psyche to cross a midday when the waters were calm and the sheep took shelter in the shade and picked the wool off of the bushes and trees. For the for the last for the last task, Venus handed Psyche a box and instructed her to travel to the underworld and collect beauty from Proserpine. Psyche decided to throw herself off a tower and let the fate dedicate her path through the underworld. But as she stood on the tower top, a voice from the tower told her of a safer way of travel to Hades' realm. It also warned her to not open the box after collecting the beauty. After successfully after successfully navigating through the underworld and collecting the beauty, Psyche's, Psyche's curiosity got the best of her. As she opened the box, she was overcome by a deep sleep. At last, Cupid found out what was going on. He flew to where Psyche lay and gathered the sleep from her body and put it back into the box. He then persuaded Jupiter to order Venus to stop her persecution of Psyche. Then they were married and lived happily ever after. And it really was ever after, since Psyche was made a goddess in due time. Psyche gave a gave birth to a daughter, Pleasure. And that's the end of the story of Psyche and Cupid. And here are the myth of Psyche and Cupid. First, Venus sent Cupid out of jealousy rather, to shoot an ugly beast with an arrow of affection towards Psyche. Next is uh, the parents of Psyche visit, visited an oracle. Next is Psyche was banished to the top of a mountain. The mountain in the shadows would appear at night as her husband. Next is the next is her sisters visited, and their jealousy of Psyche grew more and more, and find out who her secret lover was while he was sleeping. And that night, she used a candle and found out her lover was a Cupid, and he fled. Next is the Greek culture of the Cupid and Psyche. First is destiny always prevails, and we all know that that is inevitable, and because destiny will always prevail no matter what. We are all destined, whatever destiny we have, and that will come into our life. And jealousy can lead to unintended permanent actions. So I agree with this because of the story Cupid and Psyche. Uh, the story Cupid and Psyche, Venus was very jealous of Psyche, and because of that jealousy, she make a way to let that those things happen in her life, which and she lose her son, and that's why we should not let our emotion ruin us. Next is love conquers all, and because of love, Psyche did everything for Cupid just her to be with just her to be with Cupid. I think that's the end of my report, and thank you for listening. Have a good day, everyone.